The man who ruled everything. Alexander was born in 356 BC in Pelamacedone's dusty capital. Not much to look at then, but it was buzzing with ambition. His father was King Philip II, a man who turned weakness into war machines. Philip wasn't gentle. He had one eye, many wives, and endless enemies. He trained peasants into killers who marched like iron walls. Olympias, his mother, was even stronger. She was full of passion, very religious, and full of energy. She believed he wasn't just a boy, he was blessed by the gods. She whispered to Alexander that Zeus was his real father. Imagine a child hearing that every night. The boy believed it. With Philip's armies outside and Olympias's myths inside, Alexander grew up between steel and dreams. He was spoiled with prophecy and hardened with discipline. A dangerous mix. As a boy, he tamed a wild horse no one else could ride. The horse was Bucephalus, who would carry him across the world. Philip told him, "Macedon is too small for you, my son." At 13, Aristotle arrived. Not a local tutor, but the greatest philosopher alive. It was like handing nuclear codes to a teenager. Aristotle taught him logic, medicine, and politics. But most of all, he gave him Homer. The Iliad became Alexander's Bible. Alexander saw himself as Achilles reborn. He even slept with the epic guide and dagger under his pillow. Glory wasn't a dream, it was a destiny. At 16, he ruled while Philip campaigned. Rebels laughed at the boy. They stopped laughing when he built a city on their corpses. At Chaeronea, just 18 years old, he commanded cavalry. His attack defeated the sacred band of Thebes, a feared elite army. The experienced soldiers looked at him as if he wasn't human, but home wasn't safe. Philip remarried a Macedonian bride named Cleopatra Eurydice. Olympias raged, and Alexander's claim to the throne shook. At the wedding banquet, insults flew. Alexander stormed out in fury. Macedone's royal family was one sword away from tearing itself apart. Months later, Philip was stabbed to death at a festival. The killer never lived to explain. Olympias smiled just a little too brightly. At 20, Alexander was king. Too young, too ambitious, too dangerous. Perfect ingredients for chaos. Greek cities thought they could break free. Athens plotted, Thebes rebelled. They underestimated the boy. Alexander marched fast. He executed rivals and burned Thebes to the ground. 40,000 enslaved, the rest dead. The lesson was brutal. No one would rebel again. Greece was his. Now his eyes turned east. Persia, the giant of the world. The stage was set. In 334 BC, he crossed into Asia. 40,000 men against an empire of millions. Madness, but madness that worked. At the Granicus, he charged straight into the river. Blades slashed around him. An axe nearly split his skull. He should have died there. But he didn't. His men cut through. The Persians broke, and the legend grew. The boy king had survived his first test. At Issus, he faced King Darius III himself. Outnumbered, hemmed in, Alexander attacked like lightning. Darius fled, abandoning his own family. Captured, the Persian queen mother bowed before Alexander. He raised her gently, treating her like royalty. Mercy as his strategy, and it worked. At Gaugamela, the showdown came. Alexander's 40,000 men faced perhaps 250,000 Persians. He was surrounded, doomed, but brilliant. He found the gap, drove his cavalry straight through, and Darius fled again. The empire cracked apart. Persia was his. Now Alexander was more than a conqueror. He wore Persian robes, demanded bows, and styled himself a god king. His Macedonians muttered in disgust. One man stayed by his side, Hephaestion, a general and trusted advisor, was seen by many as his closest companion, even his soulmate. People compared them to Achilles and Patroclus. Marriage became politics. Roxana, the fiery Sogdian princess, came first. Later, daughters of Persian kings Statera and Parysatis sealed his power. By now, you are probably wondering if he had children. Roxana bore him a son after his death, Alexander IV. The boy would be murdered before he grew up. Olympius kept saying he was touched by the gods. Alexander chose to believe it. Egypt's oracle at Siwa confirmed he was son of Zeus. The god-king act wore thin. Macedonians bowed but rolled their eyes. Their commander bled like the rest of them. At a drunken feast, Cletus the Black mocked him. Cletus once saved Alexander's life. In a rage, Alexander killed him. The next morning, he wept like a broken child. But the damage was permanent. Rumors of madness spread. Still, he built cities, many called Alexandria. They spread Greek culture and trade across Asia. He wanted eternity carved into maps. In India, he faced King Paras. War elephants thundered across the battlefield. Alexander won, but admired Paras and made him an ally. But his army had had enough. They had marched for years, fought endless battles, and buried countless brothers. They refused to go further east. For the first time, Alexander gave in. Not to Persia, not to India, but to his own men. Even gods can be stopped by tired soldiers. The return was brutal. He dragged his men through the Gedrosian desert. Thousands died of thirst and heat. He kept pushing, obsessed with proving himself. Each step forward was another step into madness. The empire bled with him. By 32, he ruled from Greece to India. No one in history had done more, faster. He had never lost a battle. Then came Babylon. He feasted, drank, and made plans for new wars. Suddenly, fever struck. He grew weaker, losing his voice. His generals asked for orders. He could only whisper to the strongest. Within days, Alexander was dead. 32 years old, undefeated, and gone. The god-king silenced by disease. Theories flooded in. Poison, fever, alcohol. Some say he was paralyzed and buried alive, trapped in his own body. His empire shattered instantly. Generals carved it into pieces. His wives and child were murdered. Olympias fought to protect his bloodline. She was ruthless, but even she couldn't stop the tide. The empire was too large for just one person to rule. The dream ended. The empire lasted for years. Alexander became a myth the moment he died. Thank you for watching. Smash that subscribe button now and stay ahead of history. Don't miss the next legendary chapter. The world's greatest stories start here, and you want to be part of every twist.